I don't know if I loved or hated this movie. 28 years later left me feeling more mixed on a film than I can remember in honestly a very long time. Because what I thought this movie did right was incredible. Then there's some glaring holes in this movie to me, from pacing issues to abrupt tone changes that left me feeling kind of unsatisfied. And so, without spoiling anything, I'll get into more details later, but without any spoilers at the start, I just want to say that I am not the type of person who gets upset when a franchise deviates from the source material or takes a swing in a new direction from the original. I'm fully on board with filmmakers getting weird with their sequel. And 28 years later takes a long time to get into that territory, but when it does make the tone change, I can honestly say that I'm not a big fan of the direction it looks like they're going to be taking this trilogy. So in this video, I want to go over what I loved about this movie, some of the mixed feelings I have on a few things, and then finally, the things that I thought went totally wrong. And if you're wondering about the title of this video, look, I've just seen a lot of very toxic and smug discourse online from people who both loved and hated this movie, and I just wanted to poke a little fun at them. Because whichever side of the aisle you're on, we can all agree at the end of the day, this is just a movie. We can all have our own opinions without being dicks to each other, because trust me, there's more than enough dick in this movie for all of us. And so before I start, please consider hitting that subscribe button or leave a like. I really appreciate it. But starting with my positives of this film, the horror elements are all bangers. The rage virus remains the most shit your pants scary infection that I've seen on film. I feel a primal fear enter my body when one of those things is on screen. Like anytime the characters are being chased by a swarm of infected, I just feel myself wanting to like jump out of my skin and get out of the theater. It's so visceral and uncomfortable to watch in the absolute best way possible. And this has always been the franchise at its best. The infected are terrifying because of how quick and feral they are. They have zero sense of self-preservation. They literally just throw themselves towards you, and all it takes is a single drop of blood getting into your system and you're done in like 10 seconds. It's horrifying. And so the constant threat of the infected, especially in the first act, is all the good stuff that I'm here for. I also love the camera angles and the choppy editing. I've seen a few people complain about this, which I don't really understand because it was present in the first film and I think it added a lot of atmosphere, and it does the same thing in the new one. Everything that you're watching feels wrong. The camera is always slightly off balance or at an angle that you normally wouldn't be seeing, and it just feels so unsettling. The editing in this movie will have a scene that's cut like 2 or 3 seconds out in a weird spot where you kind of feel like maybe you blinked and missed something. It just creates this dreamy, or I guess nightmarish vibe that goes away as the film goes on, and we'll talk about that later. And actually, now that I'm thinking about it out loud, I almost wonder, without spoiling anything, if maybe the lack of the surrealism towards the end of the movie is supposed to be reflecting the coming of age story that we're seeing. Maybe the first act feels so dreamy and surreal because we're seeing it through the eyes of a scared boy, and then gradually that fades a bit as he grows more capable. I don't know. Like I said, I'm just thinking out loud, but either way, I liked it. While we're on this topic, I really love when horror focuses on a good coming of age story. Again, I don't think this one was done perfectly, but it's a subgenre that really suits itself to horror, and I like to see more of it. We've been in an era where trauma. That's all we see represented for like the last decade of horror movies. And I think we've gotten plenty of classics that way, but maybe shifting the focus and coming back to some more coming of age stories would be a nice change, in my opinion. Wrapping up my list of positives really quick, the direction again is wonderful. The shots of the infected, the running towards the camera is great. I loved the infrared scenes at night. I think we needed more of that because holy shit, that was scary. The soundtrack is great. I think everyone across the board delivers a great performance. This movie also nails the social commentary that has always been at the core of this franchise, in my opinion. Because at the end of the day, the virus, it isn't anything new because all of war has just been people fighting people, as the first movie says. There's some not so subtle edits that put that right in your face, the history of war and how our violence, it reflects and it repeats over and over again throughout history. It's all done very well, and I think that remains a strength for this franchise. Lastly, the comedic relief in the second and third acts, all the way up until really the actual ending of the movie, I thought was perfect because that first trip to the mainland is so intense and, in my opinion, the best part of the film. But it's so tense and gritty, and you feel so stressed out throughout the entire thing. So when you get that tone shift later on, it's truly the definition of comedic relief because it feels so good to let go of some of that tension and laugh and relax for a moment. Unfortunately, this is going to lead me to my mixed feelings section because I kind of think the movie, once it releases that tension, kind of fails to get it back. And I think this movie clearly wants to take the trilogy into a new subgenre, right? And we'll talk more about in the negatives when I get to the spoilers. But one of the main things I felt throughout this movie as it went on is I just kept asking myself, what happened to the threat? Why did it feel like the infected were so much more of a presence in the first act as compared to the second and the third? The mainland feels like this inhabitable wasteland that even so much as stepping foot on it is so dangerous. It's almost too insane to even consider. But then in the latter half of the movie, the characters are almost just frolicking around. Like they hardly run into any meaningful obstacles. And when they do, unfortunately to me, the set pieces were just not as good or exciting as the ones that we have already seen. This movie, in a way, kind of blows its load in the first act when it comes to the infection stuff, because sure, the Alpha is an awesome concept and we get some amazing carnage from it, but it just didn't feel as intense or gritty as the first act, which seems weird when a movie is structured that way. Again, this is in the mixed category because I don't think it was all bad. Like I said, we got some good carnage, but I felt like the horror and the threat was diminishing as this movie went on, and I wanted that tension to remain. I didn't need this to be a complete recreation of the first movie or anything. I didn't need them to raise the stakes super, super high, but I wanted an expansion of the world, right? I didn't need it to be recreated, but I wanted a full expansion. And I feel like we only got a small taste of that. And I think this is all obviously connected to the fact that this is a planned trilogy. And so they took a patient approach when developing the world and this mainland. We didn't get to see the full scope or scale of what's happening, but I do wish that we saw a little bit more. I really wish we had some things explained to us because it has been 28 years. So I want to know more about how they've been surviving, why the rest of the world has abandoned them, and how have the infected themselves stayed alive, right? Obviously, I'm assuming we'll get those answers, and I have some theories myself, but until the future movies, it's something that I'm going to feel mixed on right now because, hey, maybe we don't get an explanation, or maybe we get an explanation that won't be very satisfying. We'll have to wait and see, but for now, that's in my mixed category. And finally, let's get to my negatives, and before I even get to this, I want to repeat myself from the start of this video. If you love this movie and you disagree with anything I'm about to say, that's totally fine. We can still be friends. Don't take it personal. If you disagree, please explain why or how in the comments and we can discuss it. But my first negative is something that I already alluded to, but I wanted more survival horror in this film. The first act left me with this huge itch to see more of how these people navigate and survive when they're in the mainland. And truthfully, we see a little bit of it, but not nearly enough to scratch that itch for me. Ralph Fiennes was fascinating to me. I would have gladly taken another 45 minutes or even a full film of seeing how this absolute madman scientist, who's actually kind of a sweetheart, how he was surviving in the middle of this infected wasteland for all these years. But it mostly gets swept under the rug and explained in a few quick scenes or lines, and I wish we saw more of it because he was the most fascinating character in this movie to me. And again, it goes back to my point that the mainland to me, as the movie went on, just felt like it was lacking. I know we're going to see more of it in the sequels, but all we got here was a lot of big open fields and like an empty gas station or an empty building. I wanted more of the urban area, and I'm sure we're going to get that, but this movie just didn't meet the scope of what I was expecting from after 28 years of infection. The world to me felt too empty and desolate. It was too easy for them to navigate, right? They didn't run into that many infected, all things considered, and that's my big issue is that the world became easier to navigate because the main driving point of the story was kind of nonsensical, right? And look, I'm not CinemaSins. I can get over logical gaps in a movie or suspend my disbelief when characters do something that's a little stupid. But in this case, it did actually bother me because the characters were doing something so stupid that the only way for them to actually accomplish this was through some heavy plot armor, right? And the plot armor to me was felt throughout, and it increased as the movie went on. Our main character, who is, going through his own coming of age story, really doesn't do much on his own to survive or really pay off any of that. It feels like he is saved by someone else in basically every encounter we see. And I just think that you had to give the kid some individual wins along the way. Show him doing something crafty or smart to get, to escape something. But those moments weren't really there. And so it didn't feel as satisfying as it could have been. And I'm going into spoilers. If you haven't seen this movie, please go check it out in theaters. Listen, I have my mixed feelings about it. I didn't love it as much as I wanted to, but I overall thought it was a very good movie. And so go support the movie theaters and give this one an honest chance before you see my spoiler review. Maybe you'll love it. Who knows? All right. So with the spoilers in mind, I'll just say I wasn't a big fan of the cancer plot line. I think we're already in a world where there's literally an apocalypse happening with raging infected all over the place. I just kind of don't think we needed to spend time focusing on a separate terminal illness that exists in the real world. I think it's well done, but it's sad and it just made me sad. And it's a little too real for my zombie infection movie. You know what I mean? Like, I think there's more interesting things going on in this world that we can focus on where there's an infection that has spread throughout an entire country for 28 years and the rest of the world's kind of abandoned them. I would have liked to spend more time on that. Again, this storyline is very effective. It leads to a beautiful moment in the film. It tugged on my emotional heartstrings. That there's at the end of the film when the boy, I'm forgetting his name, Spike, is putting the skull on the top of the mound and he turns it to see the sunrise. That's beautiful. It's great. It's just not a storyline that I personally wanted to see. And so if this trilogy eventually takes me to the places that I wanted to see, then maybe I'll look back at this first film as its own standalone and then I'll change my mind and I'll appreciate it more. But as for now, for the big return to this universe 28 years later, I do wish that we focus more on the fictional infection and survival, especially, rather than this very real and sad disease that we're all already familiar with. The other main issue that I had with this film, and you probably knew that this was coming, but that goddamn ending. Oh my God, man. I'll say it again. Look, I'm all for changing tones and doing something crazy. I'm all for getting wacky and funny. We can do that, but this just wasn't it. This was dialed up to 12 when it needed to be at like a 4 or a 5 to even come close to matching the tone of this film. The bad wigs, the ugly jumpsuits, the clownish music that starts playing, it looks like they were leaping off of trampolines and doing backflips. I felt like I was in the circus. It's just bad, man. And those choppy cuts and awkward camera angles that we get throughout the movie are great when it's in a horror movie because it adds this unsettling feeling. But when you do those choppy, awkward camera cuts during a kung fu sequence full of backflips, it feels cheesy. I thought I was watching an SNL sketch or a scene from Scary Movie. It pulled me completely out of it. And again, I understand. This was the intention of the filmmaker. This is what they wanted to do. I'm not acting like they accidentally made a bad film. This was their intention, and it worked for a lot of people. Me personally, I just didn't like it. And if you loved it and you can't wait for the sequel, then hey, all credit to you. I'm not taking anything away from you. Personally, I would have liked this movie to focus on the horror. I would have liked the franchise to continue digging deeper into that intensity and the nastiness of the infected. But at this point, it seems like they're almost making a joke out of the infected. And when you do that, the threat is starting to fade, right? Like, this is how Woody Harrelson treated the zombies in Zombieland. And I just wasn't expecting that, nor did I really want that in my 28 Days Later franchise. I think this franchise has had the tag of being the scariest zombie movie of all time because of the original. And so we got somewhat of a dud with the sequel in 28 Weeks Later. I know some people like that, but now, years later, we're finally back with a huge budget and an opportunity to revive this franchise with another horrific entry and really just solidify it as the scariest zombie infection. And they kind of delivered on that for most of the movie, but then changed directions abruptly by the end. And again, I'll say it one more time. I'm fine with the creators doing something like this. I just think they pulled the ripcord on this very abruptly and maybe too soon. I almost wonder if you would have been better off just changing the entire tone for the next movie in this trilogy and sparing this one from the very, very abrupt ending that just, it completely takes you by surprise. And again, some people loved it. Personally, I wasn't a big fan. Anyways, my overall thoughts on 28 Years Later is that the scope felt too small. There are a lot of things that I wanted to see from this universe, and truthfully, I enjoyed 99% of this movie with the assurance that we're going to get sequels that will answer all those questions and probably show me the things that I'm yearning for. After seeing those final 2 minutes, now I'm not sure if I'm going to like the answers that I get or the direction that we go, but I'm still going to wait and see. I will definitely be tuning into the sequel because, yes, I had mixed feelings on this movie, but I honestly would have given it a 10 out of 10 for the first act, maybe an 8 out of 10 for the next two, but the third act, and more specifically, the very ending, left me feeling super flat. And so for that reason, I'm not even going to try and give it a final rating out of 10 because it's really all over the place for me, right? In a way that is mostly positive, but with some really big things holding it back. So because of that, I am very interested to hear what you thought of 28 Years Later. Please drop a comment sharing your takes on this movie. I want to read them and I would love to have some discussions. Hit the subscribe button and give me a like if you enjoyed my review. I really appreciate it, and I'll have more videos coming soon.